Before we start, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. The laughter pierced through the low hum of conversation like a blade through silk. Maya stood perfectly still near the counter, her natural hair pulled back in a crown of coils she'd spent the morning perfecting, not for them, but for herself. The fluorescent lights of the upscale boutique cast everything in sharp relief. The gleaming marble floors, the precisely arranged merchandise, the cluster of women near the register, whose eyes had been tracking her since she walked in. She wasn't imagining it. She never was. "Relax," one of them said. A blonde woman in her 40s wearing what Maya recognized as last season's luxury brand, attempting to pass as this season's exclusivity. The woman tilted her head in that particular way, the gesture that pretends to be friendly while cataloging every reason you don't belong. "You don't need to get so dramatic about it." Maya's voice had been level, professional even. She'd simply asked why the sales associate had followed her through 3 departments while ignoring the blonde woman entirely, despite them both browsing for the same amount of time. A reasonable question, a question she had every right to ask. The associate, a young man with carefully styled hair and a practiced smile that had vanished the moment Maya questioned him, stood behind the counter with his arms crossed. His name tag read, Brandon. He looked at Maya like she was a problem that had walked in off the street and refused to leave quietly. "I'm just doing my job," Brandon said, his tone suggesting that his job description included surveillance masquerading as customer service. Another woman, this one younger with precisely applied makeup that had probably taken an hour, leaned toward her friend and whispered something. Not quietly enough. Never quietly enough. "Probably can't even afford anything here anyway." The words floated across the space between them, deliberately careless, casually cruel. Maya's jaw tightened. She'd heard variations of this her entire life. In school hallways, at job interviews, in restaurants and coffee shops, and every space that certain people had decided was theirs to gatekeep. The assumption that her presence required explanation, that her existence in certain spaces was inherently suspicious. She took a slow breath, her fingers adjusting the strap of her leather bag, genuine leather, purchased with money she'd earned. Not that she should have to justify that to anyone. "I'm a customer," Maya said, her voice still steady. "I have the same right to shop here as anyone else." That's when someone mimicked her tone, a nasally, exaggerated version of her words that drew snickers from the group. The sound echoed off the high ceilings, bouncing back as if the building itself was joining the mockery. Brandon shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable now, but not uncomfortable enough to intervene. Not uncomfortable enough to tell his other customers that their behavior was unacceptable. Another comment drifted over, this time about her hair. Something about natural and professional settings and knowing your place. Knowing your place. The phrase landed with the weight of history behind it. Centuries of it. Maya's hands trembled. Not with fear, but with the effort of containing everything she wanted to say. Every articulate, devastating response that would prove nothing to people who'd already decided who she was the moment she walked through the door. Then came the words that made everything crystallize into perfect, painful clarity. "You don't really belong here anyway." Spoken by the blonde woman, not whispered, announced, with the confidence of someone who'd never faced consequences for cruelty disguised as observation. Maya's chest tightened. Not from surprise. She'd stopped being surprised by this years ago. From recognition. From the exhausting familiarity of standing in a space where your humanity was constantly being weighed and found wanting by people who'd never questioned their own right to be anywhere. She knew this script. She'd lived it in department stores and doctors' offices, in college classrooms and corporate boardrooms. The same assumptions, different costumes. The front door chimed as a security officer entered. Not unusual for this shopping district, where rent was astronomical, and the stores employed off-duty police for peace of mind. The officer was in his 50s, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades in uniform, and the posture of someone who'd stopped questioning orders a long time ago. Brandon immediately gestured toward Maya, relief flooding his features at the arrival of backup he apparently felt he needed. "Officer, this woman is causing a disturbance," Brandon said. his voice carrying that particular tone of manufactured concern. The officer, whose badge read Mitchell, approached with measured steps. He'd already made his assessment before he was halfway across the floor. Maya could see it in his eyes, the way they'd hardened into something resembling patience but was actually preemptive annoyance. "Ma'am," Officer Mitchell said, the word somehow both respectful and dismissive. "I'm going to need you to lower your voice." Maya blinked. "I haven't raised my voice." "You're creating a scene." "I asked a question. That's not creating a scene." The women near the register watched with undisguised interest now, their phones appearing in their hands as if summoned by the promise of entertainment. Not to document injustice, not to bear witness, just to watch. To consume someone else's humiliation like it was content created for their amusement. Officer Mitchell's jaw tightened. His hand drifted toward his belt. Not to his weapon, but to his radio. A casual gesture. A reminder of authority. "Ma'am, you need to calm down," he said, sharper now. Then, leaning slightly closer, he added in what might have been intended as a kind tone but landed as condescension. "Or I'll have to ask you to be quiet." Ask. As if it were a request and not a command dressed in polite language. Maya looked at him. Really looked at him. At the way he stood. The way he'd positioned himself slightly between her and the exit. The way his entire body language suggested he'd already written the report in his head where she was the aggressor, and he was simply maintaining order. Behind him, the blonde woman smiled. Small, satisfied. Maya's hands stopped trembling. She thought about all the times she'd made herself smaller. All the times she'd swallowed words to make other people comfortable. All the times she'd absorbed someone else's prejudice and carried it home like a weight she was supposed to bear in silence. Not today. Her right hand moved to her bag, slowly, deliberately. No sudden movements that could be misinterpreted or weaponized against her later. She adjusted the strap, her fingers brushing against the small device clipped to the front pocket. The recording light blinked. Red, steady, capturing everything. No one had noticed it when she walked in. A small camera, professional grade but discreet. The kind used for documentation and evidence. The kind that had been recording since the moment Brandon had first approached her, his suspicion naked on his face. Once, twice, the red light pulsed like a heartbeat. The blonde woman's smile faltered. Her eyes fixed on the camera, recognition dawning slowly, then all at once. What is that?" she asked, her voice losing its confident edge. Maya's response was simple, calm, almost gentle. "Evidence." The word hung in the air like a verdict. Officer Mitchell's posture changed. Subtle, but unmistakable. His shoulders drew back, his expression shifting from authority to calculation. He'd been recorded before. They all had, in this age of smartphones and social media. But there was something different about the deliberateness of this. About the fact that it had been running the entire time. Capturing not just this moment, but the entire sequence of events that led to it. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to turn that off," he said, trying to reclaim control of the situation. Maya didn't move. "It's my right to record in a public space. This is a commercial establishment open to the public. I'm not breaking any laws." She spoke each word clearly, knowing the camera was catching them, knowing that everything she said now would matter later. Brandon had gone pale. The young man who'd followed her through the store, who'd made assumptions based on nothing but the color of her skin and the texture of her hair, suddenly looked very young and very uncertain. "This is ridiculous," the blonde woman said, but her voice had lost its conviction. She looked at her friends, seeking support, but they'd already started edging away, their phones disappearing back into their designer bags. No one wants to be on the wrong side of a viral video. "I'd like to speak to the manager," Maya said. "Not a request. A statement." Officer Mitchell opened his mouth, likely to refuse, but another voice cut through the tension. "I'm the manager." What seems to be the problem here? A woman in her 60s approached, her expression already tight with the understanding that whatever was happening, it was going to require damage control. Her name tag identified her as Patricia Morrison, store manager. Maya turned to face her, the camera still recording, still witnessing. "Your employee has been following me since I entered the store, treating me like a theft suspect for no reason other than how I look. When I asked about this treatment, I was mocked by other customers. She gestured to the blonde woman and her group. And when I calmly expressed that this was unacceptable, your employee called security and had this officer threaten me with removal for causing a disturbance. Patricia's eyes flicked to the camera, then to Brandon, then to Officer Mitchell. Maya could see the calculation happening, the mental tallying of liability and public relations disasters. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding, Patricia began. It's all on video, Maya said quietly. Every word, every look, every assumption. The entire interaction is documented. She reached into her bag and pulled out a business card, handing it to Patricia. The manager's eyes widened as she read it. Maya Reeves, JD Community Legal Defense Initiative Civil Rights Documentation Project. You're a lawyer? Brandon whispered, the color draining entirely from his face. I'm a civil rights attorney, Maya corrected. And for the past 3 years, I've been part of a project that documents patterns of discrimination in commercial spaces. We've been collecting evidence of disparate treatment based on race, religion, and gender presentation in retail environments across the city. She let that sink in. This camera, Maya touched the device on her bag. It's been recording since I walked in. High-definition video and audio, time-stamped, uploaded in real time to a secure server. Patricia Morrison's professional composure cracked. In real time? The footage is already backed up remotely, along with metadata showing the location, date, and time. Even if something happened to this device, the evidence is preserved. The blonde woman made a small sound, something between a gasp and a whimper. Her friend had gone absolutely still, her face frozen in an expression of dawning horror. Officer Mitchell's hand had moved away from his belt entirely. He stood with his arms at his sides now, a man who just realized he was standing in the middle of a minefield. We've documented over 200 incidents, Maya continued, her voice level and professional. Patterns of behavior. Stores where customers of color are routinely followed, questioned, or asked to leave, while white customers engaging in the exact same behaviors face no scrutiny whatsoever. She looked at Brandon. Your store is now part of that database. Then at the blonde woman. As are you. Then at Officer Mitchell. And so are you, officer. Your badge number is clearly visible in the footage. As is the fact that you threatened to silence a customer who was calmly expressing concern about discriminatory treatment, without investigating the actual situation or speaking to any witnesses. Patricia Morrison seemed to age 5 years in as many seconds. Ms. Reeves, perhaps we could discuss this in my office. There's nothing to discuss, Maya said. I came here to shop. I was profiled, harassed, and threatened with removal by your security. All of this is documented. What happens next isn't up to me. It's up to the courts and the public record. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder, preparing to leave. Wait, Patricia said, desperation creeping into her voice. Please, can we? There must be something. Maya turned back. For the first time since the laughter had started, she allowed herself a small smile. Not cruel, just knowing. You can start, she said, by training your employees on implicit bias, by implementing clear policies about customer interactions, by reviewing your security protocols to ensure they're applied equally, by creating accountability measures. She paused. But mostly, by remembering that every person who walks through your door deserves to be treated with basic human dignity. Not because they might be a lawyer, not because they might be recording, but because it's right. The silence that followed was profound. Maya walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. No one stopped her. No one spoke. As she pushed through the glass doors into the afternoon sunlight, she heard Patricia Morrison's voice behind her, sharp and furious, addressing her staff. My office, now! All of you. 3 weeks later, the footage made headlines. Not because Maya released it. She didn't have to. The Community Legal Defense Initiative had compiled their evidence into a comprehensive report, submitted to the city's Human Rights Commission, along with documentation from dozens of similar incidents across multiple establishments. The video from the boutique became the centerpiece of the investigation because it captured everything so perfectly. The profiling, the mockery, the misuse of authority, the casual cruelty of people who'd never expected to face consequences. Within days, the story had spread across social media, not as entertainment, but as evidence. Context mattered. The full video showed exactly what had happened, in what order, and why. Brandon was terminated. Patricia Morrison resigned under pressure. The boutique issued a public apology and announced mandatory anti-bias training for all staff, along with a complete review of their security practices. But it was Officer Mitchell whose story took the most interesting turn. A local journalist, following up on the incident, discovered that Mitchell had been involved in 3 previous complaints of discriminatory enforcement, all dismissed or settled quietly. The cases had never been connected because they'd occurred in different districts, different contexts. Until now. The police department launched an internal investigation. Mitchell was placed on administrative leave. The other 2 officers who'd been present but failed to intervene faced disciplinary action for failure to recognize and report misconduct. The blonde woman, identified through social media as Diane Whitmore, a real estate agent, found herself the subject of public backlash after the unedited footage showed her mocking Maya's appearance and declaring she didn't belong. Her employer, a prestigious real estate firm, released a statement saying her views did not reflect their values and that they were evaluating her continued employment. The internet can be merciless to those who weaponize their privilege in public spaces. But Maya didn't revel in their downfall. She'd never wanted revenge. She'd wanted accountability. She'd wanted change. When a reporter finally tracked her down for an interview, Maya agreed to speak. But only about the work, not about herself. "This isn't about one incident," she told the camera. "It's about a pattern, about systems that allow some people to move through the world without question, while others are constantly required to justify their existence in spaces they have every right to occupy." The reporter leaned forward. "Why did you stay so calm during the incident? Most people would have been furious." Maya smiled, the same knowing smile she'd given Patricia Morrison. "Because I knew I wasn't alone. I had 200 cases of evidence showing this wasn't an isolated incident. I had a legal team ready to act. I had a community of people who'd experienced the same thing and were tired of being silent about it." She paused, choosing her words carefully, and I knew that the people laughing, the people who felt so confident in their right to treat me as less than human, I knew they'd forgotten something important. What's that? They forgot that cameras exist. They forgot that evidence can be preserved. They forgot that their actions have consequences. Maya's expression grew serious. But mostly, they forgot that dignity isn't something you can take from another person. You can only reveal your own lack of it. The interview went viral. Not because it was dramatic or confrontational, but because it was measured, intelligent, and devastatingly effective. It showed a woman who'd been underestimated by everyone she encountered that day, and who'd been counting on exactly that. 6 months after the incident, Maya stood in a very different kind of room. The city council chamber was packed. Representatives from community organizations filled the seats. Legal advocates stood along the walls. And at the front of the room, Maya presented the findings from 3 years of documentation. 247 incidents, 12 major retail chains, patterns of discrimination so clear, so consistent, that they couldn't be dismissed as isolated events or misunderstandings. The evidence was overwhelming. The council voted unanimously to implement new oversight measures for commercial establishments, mandatory bias training, clear protocols for security interactions, channels for reporting discriminatory treatment, real consequences for violations. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't enough, but it was progress. After the vote, as Maya gathered her materials, a young woman approached her. She was in her 20s, black, with her hair in beautiful locks that cascaded down her back. "Ms. Reeves?" she said quietly. "I just wanted to thank you. I was followed in a store last week, same situation as yours. But this time, when I mentioned the new city ordinance and asked to speak to a manager, the employee apologized. Actually apologized. The manager reviewed the security footage and confirmed I'd been targeted unfairly. They're retraining their entire staff. The young woman's eyes were bright with tears. It's the first time something like that has ever happened without me having to fight for it. The first time the system worked in my favor instead of against me. Maya felt her own throat tighten. This was why the work mattered. Keep documenting, she told the young woman. Keep speaking up. And remember, your dignity doesn't depend on whether other people recognize it. It's yours no matter what. They hugged, two strangers connected by the shared experience of navigating a world that too often questioned their right to exist in it, unbothered. As Maya left the building, her phone buzzed with a message from her colleague at the Legal Defense Initiative. New case just came in. Woman profiled at upscale restaurant. Already recording when incident occurred. Followed protocols exactly. Evidence is solid. Ready when you are. Maya smiled and texted back, "Send me the details. We'll add it to the database." The work continued. It always would, until it didn't need to anymore. But now, thanks to 247 pieces of evidence and thousands of people who refused to accept being treated as less than human, the ground had shifted. Not dramatically, not completely, but enough that the next person facing discrimination might find the system a little less weighted against them. Enough that the people who'd grown comfortable mocking and dismissing others might think twice. Enough that a small camera on a leather bag could be the difference between justice denied and justice documented. Maya walked into the evening light, her natural hair catching the golden hour glow, her head held high. She belonged everywhere she chose to be, and now she had proof. The laughter had come first, casual and cruel, but in the end, the people who'd laughed the loudest were the ones who'd learned that silence, true accountability, was far more powerful than any sound they could make. And somewhere in a secure server, backed up and time-stamped and preserved for the record, the evidence remained, witnessing, waiting, ensuring that what happened in darkness would always, eventually, come to light. If you like this story, leave a like and subscribe for more.